You are listening to Book Clips, a mini podcast in which authors or narrators do readings from novels. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book.
Steel City Confidential, an excerpt by Anne Hagan, narrated by Ann Etter. Chapter 1. Monday, July 2nd, 2018. Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. Rochelle Rabinowitz, Roe to her family and friends, put her hand on her client's shoulder, half turning her. She looked her in the eyes and reminded her one last time, "You don't have to do this. You can still take the fifth." Pamela Wilson broke the eye contact and looked down as she tugged at the sleeves of her jacket. "I know, but it's the only way." She rose and walked on steady feet toward the witness stand. "Please raise your right hand and repeat after me," the bailiff intoned. "I swear that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God." A lump formed in her throat. She swallowed hard and repeated the oath. Then, hands on the rail, sat down and perched on the edge of the witness seat. Roe rose at the defense counsel table and addressed her client. "Please state your name for the record." "Pamela Wilson." "Objection." Forgetting all courtroom decorum, Roe whirled on a heel and shot the prosecuting attorney, Declan Powers, a bewildered look. "Mr. Powers," the judge was confused, "is there something I should know?" "Counsel asked the witness her name, Your Honor. The witness is not telling the truth." "Counsel approach." Roe sighed and started to move around the edge of the table. "It's all right, Judge, Your Honor," Pamela interrupted. "I swore to tell the truth, and I will." She swallowed again, positioned herself a little deeper into the chair, and prepared to tell the story she'd been hiding for 28 years. Roe nodded to her client, to the judge, and then took her seat. She knew Judge Marsilio was as intrigued as the jury, sitting up in their chairs, all eyes glued to the witness box. She wasn't going to be needed for at least a couple of minutes. "My real name is Thelma Dickinson. Most people, everyone who knew me back in my former life, thinks I died in a fiery car accident in 1991, when me and my best friend drove in her car over the rim of the Grand Canyon. I didn't. I didn't die, that is. Here I am. I didn't die that day, and I didn't commit this crime I'm being—" "Objection." "Sustained. Stick to the questions being asked. Ms. Dickinson, is it?" Thelma nodded. "Yes." "Speak up for the record, please." "Yes. Thelma Dickinson. I apologize, Your Honor." Her eyes darted to Roe. "What was the question?" Roe got back on her feet. "I request a recess to confer with my client." "Objection," Powers called out. "Counsel has had plenty of time to confer with Ms. Dickinson. The witness is speaking of her own free will." "Counsel approach, both of you." Marsilio turned on the white noise machine and watched as both attorneys came toward him. Rabinowitz, as always, was imposing in her whatever she wore. Today it was a navy blue skirt suit. He'd been away from the bench for a while, but he wasn't surprised to see little had changed. He wondered if she knew she always wore that suit on the day she expected a defendant to take the stand. He could read her like clockwork. Such nice legs, he thought. Too bad. Powers started to spout off as soon as they reached the bench. Marsilio held up a hand to still him. His eyes narrow, accusing, he directed his first question to Roe. "Did you know about this?" She knew it was better to be up front with him. "Yes. I found out a couple of days ago." "And you told opposing counsel?" "No, Your Honor. That would be a breach of attorney-client privilege." Might I remind you, a murder is in question here, and now I find out your client has been living outside the law for, apparently, quite a number of years. Who knows where this rabbit hole is going to lead us?" Powers nodded his head throughout the judge's tirade, ever the yes-man. "I'm well aware of all that, Your Honor. No matter her real name, or how she came to be using an assumed one, my client is innocent, and I intend to prove it." "I admire your chutzpah, Ms. Rabinowitz. I'm not so sure about your common sense, however. You might want to consider asking for a continuance, or, I don't know." His tone became haughty. "Seeking a mistrial? Maybe pleading her out? You've got a jury sitting over there looking at her like she's a piece of steak." Roe resented the insult to her knowledge and skill. Par for the course with these guys. My record speaks for itself. She wasn't worried about the jury. "If everyone is ready, I have a witness on the stand," she told them. "It's your grave," Declan hissed at her under his breath as they walked away from the dais. Chapter 2. Late summer 2017. North Rim, Grand Canyon National Park. Hal took off his hat and mopped his brow with a bandana he pulled from his day pack. He stuffed the bandana in his pocket, dusted the hat against his leg, and replaced it. Below him, the trail snaked along. A few tourists had passed during the day. Now, casting a glance that way, a couple, a man and a woman, were picking their way off the trail, coming toward him. He watched them for a few seconds longer than he'd normally give up precious time to. They were still several hundred yards away. It would be another 15 minutes before they picked their way up through the rock debris to reach him. He shook his head. "Damn nosy tourists. Stay away. Leave me be." Turning back to the rock face, he scanned the surface in front of him, set a hook, and attached a piece of string. He marked the location of the tiny hook with a piece of red cloth. That done, he eyeballed a meter of length and set another hook to his right, then repeated the process, moving further to the right, adding a piece of red cloth every 4 or 5 hooks. By the time the couple were within easy shouting distance, he'd mapped out the uppermost portion of the grid squares he intended to search that week. "Hey, old-timer," the man called out. Hal sneered at the term, but didn't turn to the man. "You okay up there? You lost?" "Name's Hal, and I'm fine." He glanced over to his left to see both hikers inspecting his string line. "Don't mess with that," he warned them. "That some kind of guideline?" the woman asked. She was somewhat younger than her companion, and she had a sweet voice. Hal turned sideways then and gave her a half-smile. "You could say that. It's a starting point." "Starting point for what?" the man asked, nosing in again. "It's hot out here. Too hot for you. Just what kind of game are you playing, old man?" "Old man now?" "I told you, the name is Hal." He looked the man up and down. "How old are you?" 44. I'm George. People call me Geo." "I'll bet they do." "Short for George, short for geodes. My hobby." "You won't find any of those out here," Hal said. He looked at the woman. She was more perceptive than he would have given her credit for. "Bet you're wondering how old I am?" When he didn't answer, she said, "I'm 22. His eyes flickered back to George. He hoped they registered his disgust. "She's my daughter," George said. "Just graduated from college. We're taking a little walking tour of her future laboratory." "I was a geology major. Just got on with the Park Service." "Good for you. Wish you the best of luck," Hal said. He even meant it. "She doesn't look anything like you." "Have you got permission to be out here, setting hooks in the rock faces?" George asked as he butted back in. Hal nodded. "Yep. Permit and all. Do this in this area same time every year." "Almost every year, anyway." The woman stood back and inspected his line. "You're blocking off a grid. You some sort of archaeologist?" "I'm sorry. I didn't catch your name." "It's actually Lenore, but I go by Leah." Well, Leah, though I do say I like Lenore. You're right, it is a grid. But I'm not an archaeologist. I'm a retired cop. George's eyes narrowed. What's going on, Hal? Should we be concerned? Nothing's going on. Not anymore. George wasn't about to back off. Then what are you looking for? Carcasses. Leah was taken aback. George thought he misunderstood the man. I beg your pardon. I said carcasses. You know, bones, skeletons, skulls, that sort of thing. Like dinosaurs or something? Leah asked. Hal shook his head. Human. Natives? Nope. Outlaws. 2 women, wanted for murder. Steel City Confidential. An excerpt. By Anne Hagan. Narrated by Ann Etter.
You have been listening to Book Clips. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book. If you are interested in showcasing your novel, then check out the show notes for more information.